Hello, my name is Ralph and welcome to the channel. This bike is going to get this Ultima thing in it, which carries everything that you need in the wiring harness, but I found in the past this is designed to sit on a frame here like this as a little tiny hole, but when you plug the plugs in, they actually hang down beyond this little area, and what happens is that it shorts out and shorts those plugs out, and I've seen it happen a few times now. So where we've got to put this on the bike, we're going to try to design up something a little different. My thought is to take a piece of 1-inch pipe, and I'm going to cut some pieces off like this to mount this to the 1-inch pipe, and then on the 1-inch pipe I'll make some flat stock out here so that I can bolt it onto the panel inside. So we're going to try and hide it up in under this panel here. As you can see, when these plug in, they hang down beyond that and they'd be crushed in there, and the vibrations and everything causes them to short out in there. I've seen that on custom builds and things. So I'm going to lift this up with this little piece of round stock so that none of this will hit anything, and it'll allow us just to tip it in a little bit, although there's a lot of room underneath the side panel here. But that's the plan. So I'm going to put the round stock there and probably put a piece up here that I can bolt in and mount it very solidly, and you can still see everything and get at it. So that's the plan for today so far. So let's go along and cut ourselves off some small pieces there and get some flat stock and see what we can do here to get this thing mounted, and then we can of course move forward with the other things. All right, so we're just going to get a length on this. I expect about 1 inch should be fine. Probably a little more than what we need, but I'm going to make these, let's say 3/4 of an inch. Make it about perfect, and we'll mark it again there at roughly about 3/4 of an inch. So we'll cut these off to the right length and perhaps drill and tap a hole, finding what's the right size for that, something to hold it in there, and find ourselves some flat stock and move on from there. Be all right. There's clearance, yeah. Clearance in behind it. All right. Be able to plug all our plug-ins in. And once we have them in place, we can just put this back in here. A couple bolts. Then we'll tighten up our bolts. And then our panel's in there underneath the cover and out of the way and mounted good and solid there. And I'm going to put a little piece of, just a small piece of tube, tire tube in behind that, just to help with any sort of vibrations or anything, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere there. There we go. So that's where it'll be, tucked in there. And all our wiring can run through here. Plugged in. And everything will be underneath the cover. So we just have to get them in the right position there. Have to actually take it off to make sure that we're hooked up in the right configuration. There we go. And this one will go up in there. Gonna get it in there for now, but you get the idea. Everything's nice and clean in there, but where it should be. All right. Today we're working away at this electrical system on this Birch bike, and fortunately I was able to pick up part of a wiring harness here for up inside the fairing, which is going to help out greatly. I've got 2 more harnesses here for different ends and things like that off Softails, but sometimes it's the little small things that you need more than anything. One of them being like these small pieces here that go into these are the light pieces that actually snap into the different gauges on the fairing, but they're a little different setup and they plug in to a different plug themselves. So I'm short a couple of those. Another thing being the small thing for resetting your speedometer. I'm going to need a cap for that, even though I have the threaded piece. But most of the other pieces, like this here that goes up into the indicator panels, things like that are invaluable because I only have one pieces hanging out. So I only have some of the pieces hanging out of what's on the fairing there, and you know, all the wires were cut off, which is not a big deal. I'm going to have to wire things in as well. But some of them small things like that that are missing out of the lights and things like that, hard to come by aftermarket, trying to buy them. Almost impossible in some cases. But we're going to be able to find what we need, I think. We've got a new unit to put on there now. Ultimate, it's an Ultima unit, and I think that it's going to work just fine. We've made our mounts and stuff for it here, but this unit is going to be have everything plug into it. Now some of the bike is pre-wired, which is nice, and what we're just going to have to do is check out the different connections here going to the front to make sure they're applicable with this unit to where things should be plugged in. But we have everything there. Again, when it comes to getting some of the other pieces that we don't have, we're going to have to order. Surprisingly enough, when they send you this whole ignition complete kit setup, if you have indicator lights, you got to order a special harness for that. It will plug into the unit, but they don't include it. Go figure. I hate it so much when you get things that are supposed to be the whole kit, and then something like that is missing. So it's either not much forethought on their beginning doing it, or it's just a ploy to get you to order more pieces as you go. But I know when you're working on something, it turns out to be a pain in the ass when you're halfway through it and you go, oh, I don't have that. A typical example for that is if you order a new kickstand for your bike for many of the early years and stuff like that, guess what? They don't send you the nut for the top. They give you all the other pieces, but not the nut. You know, probably your old kickstand is rusted and cruded and beat to pieces. Now you've got to take that old nut off of yours, if it will fit, and put it onto that new chrome kickstand and use that cruddy piece for it. So why would they not send that? It's very annoying, and there's so many things like that, and I'm sure all of you out there have run into that and bought the kit and then found, oh, the kit doesn't have this or that. So, such is a part of aftermarket life. It's the way it goes. But I'm pleased with the harnesses that we have. I'm pleased with the pieces that we've gotten. A friend of mine, Scott, brought this stuff up to me, and it's going to help me out greatly. So anything that you can get to help speed up the process when you're dealing with electrical stuff is a great help, especially all the correct ends and the plug-in pieces and stuff like that. The rest of it is just wiring from A to B and getting everything in the way it should be. But that's time consuming, and you should have a bit of an idea what you're going to start with when you begin, because you'll get a unit and you'll get a bunch of wire, and everything's got to go where it's got to go. All right, so we're going to move along with this now, and we're making headway. We have some of it wired in here back from the taillight assembly. This is going over to our box over there, but this is all in here nice. So we've got a few pieces left to go. Some of these wires going through here are not connected. One's for the oil, the neutral light switch, another one's for power to the starter, and we still have to figure out what we're going to do with this here, which we have nowhere to plug in. And this is the unit for, I guess it's our Speedo drive unit is what it is. This is the unit for our Speedo drive off of the transmission. So we'll have to figure out how we get that connected to the speedometer itself and make sure that it works. But it's an ongoing process, and we'll get to it. So while we're starting on the wiring, this bike was originally wired to go with a Thundermax unit, and now we're putting an Ultima unit on it. So the wiring, unfortunately, in all these plugs is different than what it was supposed to be for the Thundermax. We bought a little kit of tools. These are for removing all sorts of different connectors, wiring connectors and such. And it's quite a variety of them all, and it was like 20 bucks for the whole thing, and there's way more than that. But this is actually the one that we needed here. To try and give you a better visual of it, these are the small pins, for example, that are in these. And on these pins, there are small little pieces sticking up, which locks it in and keeps it from coming out. So when this slides over it, it actually folds the little pins up and allows you to pull the wire out of the connector. Without this, you would never get them out. So we're just going to go along and pull these. We've already pulled a couple. So you just slide it in and then pull the wire. It's a pretty simple procedure, but without the tool, it's pretty well impossible to get them out. And we certainly don't want to destroy any of them. There, and one more. There we go. Now all our wires are out of the connector. So we just go by our wiring diagram, which tells us that number one, and these plugs also, although it's very hard to see, have flat spots on them here and here and here. There's 3 flat spots on this plug, which helps you when you look at the wiring diagram, which we can see here. It shows you that there's a flat spot here and a flat spot there, so that we can line these up in their place. So if we start with the flat spots to the left, and we start with number 1, our wiring diagram tells us that number 1 is a red one for auxiliary power. And these are actually tagged in the wiring where it says AUX for auxiliary. So we'll take our first one, making sure that our things are in the right place, and we know that that is number 1. So we're going to slide that up, and you push it in. You'll see it at the end, and it's also locked in there now, so it can't come out. Number 2 is going to tell us that it's the left front turn signal of purple. And we're also going to redo this because these things now in this plastic container, plastic weatherproofing unit, are not in the right place. So we also have to make sure that these are in the right place when we put our units in there. So we'll just go back and take that one out. Here we go. And we'll take this plastic unit, rubber unit off. I'm probably going to have to use that pin as well to get it through the rubbers. Otherwise those little tangs will want to grab on the rubbers. So it's going to be a tedious process to go through all of the wiring to get it right. Here we go. Okay, now that we have the rubber piece off, we're just going to stick it in the end of our plug. And we should be able to run our wires right through that. So again, we're going back to the beginning. We're looking for the flat spots on here, which are on this side. And we're telling us that number 1 is for auxiliary power. So we're just going to shove that in. And you actually feel it click and lock in there when you get it to that point. So number 1 is right. Again with the flat spot. The next one would be our signal light. There we go. Now that one's ready to go. So we have to go through all these and rearrange all of them to get them where we want. All right, so we'll work away at that. So now we've got all our plugs wired up to match the Ultima unit here, and other than taking the time to do it, it went along fairly good. So I'm pretty pleased with that. So we just got to plug these in. I'm not going to plug them in yet because I have a few more things to do here. But now we're all done here. Most of our wiring is done on the other side as well. So now we're just going to go up front and work on the wiring up top. So while we're trying to hook up this Ultima system on them, we need a separate power for the brake light switch in the front and for the signal light, I believe, in the front. We're going to have to make some changes up inside the handlebars, both of them. The brake light switch and the signal light switch both need individual power in order for this unit to work. And what we had here was both units were tagged onto here. This is why I have these off now and marked, but both of these wires are right from here. And these have to individually, one go to the brake light switch and one power to the signal light switch. Same on this side over here, of which we only have one here. This is the horn power, and we don't even have a wire coming out for the other one. Although we have it in the rear on our switch plugs that go into the panel, we don't have it coming out of this wiring harness here. So we've got to go find that wire somewhere where this orange wire is joined together and just a single one has come out, and run a new length of wire to come out and hook to another terminal separately to go up to our signal light power. So we've just taken our meter and took our testing for continuity across the units up to here. So when we touch our terminal up here, we can see that we have continuity back to the rear plug on that one line. So we know that that one is going back to a specific terminal back in the box. So we've just hooked one end of our terminal using our little tool into where the yellow and white wire is on this. When we touch it again, it shows us continuity through this wire. So we need to run a separate wire all the way up. We'll do the same for the other one. So we know that we have continuity from front to rear on 3 of the wires, but we don't have the 4th, and there's no 4th one run. So we've got to go through the wiring harness here and find where this has been changed, or for some reason 2 wires have been joined together, as would be all right in the different year switches, but this has 96 and up switches and they have to be run individually. So we've opened up the wiring harness here right up the front where it's coming out, and as we can see here we have 1 orange white, there's 2 orange white, and 3 orange white. We need to have 4 running up through there. So we just come back and keep looking through the harness in another area farther down. We'll peel this wiring out. 1, 2, and we've still only got 3 orange-white wires there. So we're still missing them farther. So we've got our plugs wires here, and they're going up through here through this big wire. We've opened it up coming back, and we only had 3 wires, and from this side we've had 4. So we'll keep peeling the harness open until we find what we're looking for. And here we've got 1, 2, 3 orange wires. So we got to go back farther, and lo and behold, right there is what we're looking for. We've got 2 orange-white wires spliced into 1. So what we need to do is cut this one, solder a new connection on that, and run a separate wire all the way up to the front, going through the harness and right up to the front, so we can put an end on it up there and give us our 4th wire. So 1 we can leave soldered together there, and that's fine. So what we'll do is cut this one right here. I always like to squeeze them all with a pair of pliers. Takes another minute, but gets rid of any pointed pieces that are sticking up there. Yeah, we'll just put some tape around these. Cover up that bare wire end. Try to tidy this up back in here. All right, back in through here. So now we've got the wiring all tied in. It's nice and neat. So we've got it all twist tied up and tied in underneath here, good and solid, so nothing's hanging out anywhere. Well, that looks good. We've got our unit all mounted in here. We're going to put a couple little tie wraps on in here, around it and around it, just to keep it from any kind of vibrating, and then bolt it down tight that we have to do in there. And then that unit will be contained underneath the side panel and out of the way of everything. So looks good. It's all nice and clean and nice and neat in there. And once we finally got it tie wrapped and stuff, I will put a couple tie wraps around these things just to make sure that they're all in place and nice and neat and tidy. So now that we've got most of the things tidied up towards the rear of the bike, we've got a couple little places to go with a few little tidbits of wiring, but not very much. Now we're going to have to take the handlebars apart and all up in here and try to run a new wire up through to each individual one up there, where we need to have 2 of the orange-white wires where they're joined up there in the handlebars on the 96 and up units. So once we get that straightened out, then we can wire them in the front, and that should take care of our wiring, and we'll put the battery in it and check things out and make sure that everything's working the way it's supposed to. We hope it is. Such is the way with wiring.